Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, you got MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well. 5 weeks of your fantasy footy season are in the rear vision mirror, but don't you worry. Even though we're just over a month into 2023, there is still plenty of the season to go and lots to talk about coming off the back of round 5 gather round. Over 40 new positional changes with the DPPs. They are in game. And on our strategy roundtable, there is a lot to discuss. Joining me on this episode, both of them took a week to just freshen up. No sub-vest required. We gave them a week off to be fresh for a new week. MiniMonk, hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm the rookie that's being managed. It's a very early one in the season, but I should be coming back nice and fresh now.
Yeah, no problem. Harry, you are the Harry Sheasel of the fantasy community, aren't you? Just having an absolute standout first year, better than everyone else. And then, Rids, does that make you Scott Pendlebury, the old bloke that still just is as good as he's ever been?
Oh, I'm not that good anymore, so... but I'm coming back, so I'm just coming back to say hello.
Oh, well, yeah, it's certainly doing more than that, lads. There's a ton of stuff I want to get through with you. Our Patreons, which you can join the group with the links in the description of this episode, have given us some incredibly juicy questions that we want to get to right throughout the episode. Want to talk trade boosts and trade priorities. Want to talk cash cows. Of course, we've got to get through those DPPs and look at some of them. I want to talk about the difference between targeting an underpriced premium and a fallen premium. I know it feels like I've just said the same thing twice. They're really different. We'll get to that in a second. Want to talk cash cows, trading priorities, and a bunch of different stuff. But lads, maybe we'll start here before that. I made this comment at the top of the episode about rankings and how people are going. And MiniMonk, it does happen every year, but we get to kind of 5 weeks into the year, and the serious coach, which is predominantly those that listen to the Coaches Panel across multiple formats, if you're having a really okay to slow to poor start to the year, I know you're not at the moment, but if you're in that position, what's some encouragement you give some coaches, knowing that we are only not even a quarter of the way through the season?
It's basically that. We're not even a quarter of the way through the season. And a lot of the moves that you have made maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks ago to fix rookies, fix mid prices, those moves haven't come out. The points and the cash generation that come from those moves haven't come out of the wash yet. It takes a long time and a lot of rounds and a lot of rookie scores and premium scores to wash out to see where you actually end up. Because if we're playing the game based off of, the first 3 rounds of the season, then it'd be a boring game. You just pick players that have got a good matchup for the first 3 weeks and that's it. But we're picking players for the season. We're picking rookies to generate cash to allow us to get to 22 premiums, or in some cases, even 23. And it comes out in the wash. I mean, we've got buys to plan for, which are going to be a headache. We've got matchups to come. We've got players that might go down injured, might go down suspended, which is now a hot topic. And it all comes out in the wash. So there's still plenty of time to come back. You might be in a position where you're not too happy with your rank, but just keep doing the same things, fix your team up, make the right moves, and you'll recover. It's as simple as that.
Rids, is it really as simple as the difference as 1 or 2 moves in starting squads is the difference between a good start, a bad start, and an absolutely on fire start?
Of course it is. And it always has been, MJ. We see this every single year, yeah? We see guys that burst out of the gates in the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then suddenly teams sort of adapt to them and start planning for them. And I mean, let's talk about Nick Dacos right now. So there was a lot of discussion in the preseason, about tags. A lot of people were scared off by that. Now, some people may not even, I don't own him yet in AF. I own him in DT and SuperCoach, but we had that discussion a couple of weeks ago where I said he was absolutely warranted in SuperCoach to jump on. But AF right now, I had bigger problems to, fix. And then MiniMonk just said it a second ago. Like, I've made moves for 4 or 5 or 6 rounds time. Like, I don't know how they're going to end up right now, but it looks okay to me with cash gen and making sure the benches are fixed and fixing better problems down the line.
Yeah.
People are doing that if you're smart. So, of course, though, if you do that, you're not going to get the sugar hit, are you?
No.
But let's look at Nick Dacos, okay? For people that have jumped on him, he's not going to average 120 for the year.
Probably not.
There's no chance of that, you know? He's got one hell of a beautiful start to the season. There's no dramas about that, okay?
Yeah.
But at some point in time, even the coaches now, MJ, are talking about giving him some attention. We've got media talking about, why aren't you going and making him accountable? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you Even the coach last week was like, oh, yeah, we had a heated discussion in the coach's box that we're going to... You know what generally happens, MJ, the week after when they don't do that and the guy comes out and is best on ground and has 10 coaches' votes?
They go for it the very next one.
Yeah. And I mean, he comes into Essendon this week and then he goes into Adelaide the next week. So what's the number one thing that we're expecting here? I reckon it's Will Snelling is going to go stand next to him.
Ben Keys the week after.
And Ben Keys is going to go and get a job on him the week after. So everyone's now let their guards down going, oh, yeah, the tag's not real. It's a myth and everything else. Guess what?
It's coming.
There's every chance it's coming, okay? So I just want to say that. I'm not saying it's 100% chance. I'm just calling that out. But if that happens, you know, that's where you jump up if you don't own a day cost. That's where the fears of you not starting are actually... You know, they're franked a bit, you know, they're like, okay, this is how it happens. And guess what, MJ? If they win a game or two in the next couple of weeks, and I'm talking about Essendon and Crows, and other teams go, oh, wait a sec, if we tag this kid and actually slow down his influence, we might actually win a game of football
chance
here. So, I mean, this is what happens through the year. And it doesn't have to be him. Look at Adelaide and Jordan Dawson.
Same thing. Same
what do you
conversation.
reckon's happening this week with Hawthorn?
Oh, they're tagging every day.
Mitchell, yeah, but they're not sitting there in the match committee going, yeah. They're actually going, who are we going to use to tag?
Nash, McGuinness,
whoever, you know. That's the discussion that's happening right now.
Yep, that's good.
I was just going to say, Essendon did it last year. They got killed by Lachie Neale early on in the season, and then they came back up at the Gabba and went, we're not going to get killed by Lachie Neale this time. And they sent Caldwell to him. And he did a phenomenal job to slow him down. And I think they nearly won that game. And so why would they not do it this year as well? So I think Rids is 100% right. Like, if you're not a Dacos owner at this point, chances are you've probably missed the boat.
Yeah.
If you're not a Dawson owner this week, you may have missed the boat as well.
Yeah, you could put Oliver, maybe even English in that if you wanted to.
Exactly. And I was talking before about how cash generation comes out in the wash. It starts to come out of the wash now because now we're in upgrade season. This is where your cash generation, the rookies that you have in the bench, those things that haven't really made that much of a difference to your overall score and your overall rank to this point of the season, now is where they start to become vitally important. And now is where those moves that you have made to fix those rookies, fix those failed mid-prices, will start to kick in.
Well, let's talk about this moment. Please, Ritz.
Thing. And I just want to, because both of you guys are the unlucky owners of Menzie, okay, who's come
Jai Menzie, yeah. Thanks for the 9 on field.
But you guys would be able to, like, his cash gen was going great guns before that.
Yeah, he was the best cow in the forward line nearly.
Yeah, one bad performance, it all stalls, and then suddenly he becomes a trade out target this week, or a priority trade out to a point. This is how quickly that can change. Like, there's no way any Menzie owner was thinking we're going to have to trade him out next week. That's potentially they might have if they were able to upgrade elsewhere. But they wouldn't have had that as a priority. Right now, though, the week after, it's a priority.
Yeah, the game changes very quickly in a week. And you both made this interesting, alluding to points of this time in the season. We've had our first DPP changes, 5 games of footy, plenty of data has rolled through. In all formats now, we've seen multiple price movements, both on the upward and the downward trend. And we find ourselves in this interesting junction of the season where, to MiniMonk's point, it's upgrade season. These premiums that we've been targeting have now seen 30, 50, 80, 100 odd $1,000 fall away from their starting price, and they are now quote unquote ripe for the picking. We've seen some of our cash cows have some really nice scores, maybe in the case of Menzie, start to dip away. Maybe it was one of our vested players. Now they've hit their cash generation stall point. But it's not true for all. And so we enter into this interesting point of the season. I'm keen on both of your thoughts. We'll start with you, MiniMonk, and then absolutely, Rids, you can jump off the back of that. Talk me through this interesting tension where we've got this upgrade cadence that we're looking to do and to get really aggressive in making our moves and priorities fast, while not negating our cash generation. Because the last thought I'll say on that is often the guys we're looking to tap out of first are the guys that are potentially some of our best money makers, but they've just hit a wall because of a vest, one poor game, whatever. So, MiniMonk, talk us through that kind of almost dilemma and processing between those two worlds colliding.
I'm going to take it to an extreme.
Please.
Let's talk about rookies that we are fielding and rookies that we have on the bench. If you want to get a rookie to a premium this week, the easiest one to move would be Harry Sheezel.
Sure.
Because he has so much coin on his head. But nobody is talking about trading Harry Sheezel because you want to field him because he's scoring like a premium. Well, let's go to the next level down. The next level down is probably Will Ashcroft. Popped a 90 odd this weekend, 70 odd in SuperCoach. You probably want to field him for the next 3 or 4 weeks at least. Not many people are talking about trading him.
Nope.
What about if we go to the other extreme? Let's talk about someone like Lockie Cowan.
Sure.
He's performing reasonably well,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have that much cash on his head. And so people aren't talking about trading him because they think, well, even if I do, there's not really that much that I can get to. This is the time of the year where it becomes tricky because you have to make the most of the cash that you have from the cows that you want to trade. I know that Rids mentioned it before. You and myself, we both have Menzie. He's a pretty forced trade. It's a pretty easy one to jump off of.
Definitely.
Let's look at ones that other people are trying to move off of. Jinbi, subbed out, low score. Can you move off him this week? Sure. Is he the best cow to move off of this week? Maybe not. He's been a pretty good rookie up until this point. He's had one pretty poor game because he was subbed out after he got a bit of an eye knock, a couple of corkies, nearly studs up in the face.
Yeah.
Tricky one. Cam McKenzie, subbed, used as the vest this week. Comes out, scores a 14, I think, in SuperCoach and a 20 in AF. But he's going to be, primed to play this weekend. Do you want him to trade him out? Perhaps not. So it's about managing that kind of combination. It's about what rookies don't give me the scores on field that I need, don't give me any more cash generation, and what can I get to with that coin? So it's about the combination of those things. And upgrade cadence to go to the top premiums, okay. Say people are targeting the likes of Took Miller, Lockie Neal, Rory Laird this week because they're quote unquote bottomed out in price. If you don't have the cash to go up to them without culling a good rookie, it's probably not the right move to go onto them. It's probably better to try and find the premium or the underpriced premium or the value pick that you can move to with the rookies that you want to trade out because they might not be on your field. They might be coming back down in price rather than forcing an upgrade by trading out rookies that you're going to want to be fielding for the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think there's a trade-off there that's kind of been missed this week because, people are looking at the likes of, let's throw some names out there, Johannesson and Jones in AFL Fantasy because they've got a cheap price and people think, I could just sideways a rookie to them. I get a rookie off the field. I get a player on. Is that a bad move? Perhaps not. But it's something that they can do with the cash that the rookies have on their head without killing the structure of their team. And it's a combination. It's all about what you can do with your team, with the cash you've got in the bank from your trades last week, with the rookies you've got capped out in price, with the premiums that you want to target.
It's good. Your thoughts on that, Rids?
Yep. So just the way I have always played the game, okay, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to upgrade my bench rookie to become like whoever it is to come on the field and then push the rookie that I had on the field to the bench spot. So
Right.
that way then the cash gen is still there, the job security is still there. There's some sort of assurance that I'm always going to have some sort of cover. And like Wilmot's probably the best example, okay? So if I could push Wilmot onto the bench, he becomes my emergency for my defensive line or my mid line with that now new DPP. So, and I might be able to get a Cowan up to a Johannesson, with smart trading, with whatever it is. That would actually be my preference always when it comes to this sort of discussion. But what I'm seeing at the moment, and MiniMonk was 100% correct, is we're seeing people move Jinby, say, to a Johannesson, okay? Now, at the end of the day, MJ, I know that the break-evens are in the favour of Johannesson at this point in time. But the reality of the situation is I think Jinby's probably got a better job security than a Johannesson or a Jones at this point in time, or at least equal.
Role security, sure.
Okay. And he's probably got a better role because he's playing in the middle. He's playing as an inside mid. He's tackling. He's been freshened up. He's ready to go this week. I think Simpson's even said that he's going to play this week because there's no one left in the team that could probably play anyway. And he's probably going to make just as much cash over the next 4 to 6 weeks due to that. So I don't see that as an upgrade, but people are saying it is an upgrade because they're getting a rook off the field. And I just don't think people are thinking through this properly.
So we're talking about guys like Jinby, McKenzie, Chandler, that for the most part across the formats, you could argue Davey to a lesser extent, but let's throw him into the mix too. Guys that have arguably got some of the best job security. Let's not talk about who we're moving them up to because we might not be moving them up to.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about the cows that we might be moving them down to put on the head of the Cowans. Let's talk about those guys because there are some okay cows, but is there concerns of you boys moving off these incredibly secure cows for some volatile in terms of role and job security?
So, MJ, if I say a couple of names right now, okay? If I say Roberts, if I say Johnson, do they smell vesty at all to you?
Red or green almost every single week.
Yep. Now, if I say Seamus Mitchell, now what do we know about Seamus Mitchell at this point in time is he didn't play the first 4 games and he sort of came out of nowhere and made a debut last week and he had a nice role and he did very well. There's no problems about that. And he should be a target this week. But if you're going someone who's got amazing job security and has been proven, made a couple of 100,000, let's say a Chandler to a Mitchell, that doesn't fill me with confidence in 4 weeks' time. It might fill me in confidence for this week, but not in 4 weeks' time or 5 weeks' time when we're going to need that cash gen still ticking over. We're going to need that, Otherwise, if you're not planning for 4 weeks' time, you're actually not planning. Like if you do week to week to week, you're going to hamstring yourself a little bit if you're not careful about who you're trading into with the rookies.
So, MiniMonk, on that, some might hear and go, yeah, I'm not too worried about 4 weeks away because I'm getting this premium player by making that trade of Chandler or Jinby down to that basement cow. And again, they're not on the bubble in SuperCoach and DreamTeam, so it might not be a priority, but in AFL Fantasy, they've had a little cash movement. But I don't care because it gets me the player I want and I'm looking for points. So where does that dilemma of points and cash generation, when does that wrestle start to become a bit more realised for us?
This week, you trade out Chandler, Jinby. Next week, you trade out, McKenna, Wilmot. The week after, you trade out Ashcroft. Who's coming onto the field to cover these rookies as well?
Yeah, that's true.
Like, that's where it kills you in the long run. It's the combination of the cash generation you're getting out of the rookies and which rookies come onto field. If you've got, pretty decent rookies sitting at M9, D7, F7 that you can put onto your field, 1 week, probably don't get hurt. 2 weeks, you might start to feel the sting. 3 weeks is where it starts to probably feel a little bit worse. This is why Rids was talking about it before. The rookies you kind of want to get rid of are the ones that sit on your bench because chances are they're the more unreliable scorers. They've got the lesser job security. They're less likely to go up to a point where their cash generation is wild and where you can easily trade them up to a premium. That's where you get killed in the long run. You get killed not by the premiums you're getting in, because everyone knows that Took Miller's a great buy this week.
Yeah.
Roy Laird's a great buy this week. Tom Stewart's a great buy this week. No one's doubting that. But if you're having to field, Ollie Hollands or Lockie Cowan or Jacob Van Ruin for 3 weeks while you're sorting the rest of your team out, that's like 100 points, 150 points that you're losing there. That's where it kills you in the long run.
Yeah, it's a good take. So what should be the trade? Again, every team is unique. Every format is unique. So to give generalized advice, and I'll put that caveat there, is always dangerous. Coach's temperament and appetite for risk. There's always multiple different things there. But generally speaking, boys, and then I do want to talk about some specific players in a moment. But generally speaking, what's some advice for coaches looking through plans and purposes and intent for their trades? MiniMonk, we'll start with you.
The typical rule of thumb as to when the time is to trade a rookie out is when their break even matches what they've been averaging roughly through the season, or what you can see them scoring in a particular round.
Sure.
And the problem with that is that it varies depending which format you're playing. I think a really good example might be someone like Baker, Oscar Baker for the Dogs. In Real Dream Team, you absolutely don't want to trade him this week because he had a 75 last week, and that's staying in his price cycle. Whereas in SuperCoach, you probably do want to trade him because he's had a couple of back-to-back pretty poor scores.
Sure.
But has he got enough cash in his head? Probably not, but that's a discussion for another point. But that's the sort of things you want to be looking for. You want to be looking for, when is a player maxed out in price, and what am I doing with that upgrade? If you're bringing in a reasonable rookie, say you had, Mackenzie at M9 this week because you knew he was going to be sub, you trade out someone like Baker and you get at Mackenzie at M8 this week, that's not going to hurt you that much because Mackenzie's coming off the rest. Chances are he probably goes about even with Baker in a score, and you're getting a premium out of it on the other end. Whereas if, again, I hate to harp on about it, but if you're bringing on a Cowan or a Hollands or a JVR onto your field as a result of the rookies that you're trading out, you probably want to be looking elsewhere. You've got to look at the points that you're making from not only the premium that you're bringing in, but based off the rookie that's also coming onto your field in the process.
That's good.
I think it's really important as well. Just look at the last 2 weeks. We've had Will Day getting suspended for 2 weeks. This week, we've had Zach Merritt, we've had Tom Green suspended. There's a lot of things that can change very quickly, that whatever you plan for is going to be, reverted back, and it's going to be a waste of time to a point. But the fact is, you still should be planning to complete your team. How are you going to complete your team? Who do you want in that team as the end final product? You don't want to be going and accepting. Like, MJ, how many times have we got to the last couple of, say the last month to 6 weeks of a season, and we start going, oh no, we've run out of trades, or we've run out of money, and so we've got to take these ones and accept, and we hold on to someone who's not even close to a premium sometimes as your last spot on a position, and it just impacts so much. And same thing with AF. If you're not having the cash to spend to actually go from your mid-pricer to premium, you could be stuck for a very long time with that mid-pricer. And we know the volatile scoring ranges that some of the mid-pricers have. They could go through a bad run, and you're averaging 50 or 60. And the premium that you really should have jumped on a while back is now going at 100. You're losing 40, 50 points a week potentially doing that. And a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to have won Dream Team. I had Will Day as one of my rookies at D6. And this is where it gets really cool. We saw Nick Dacos last year, mate.
Yeah.
We could have kept him all year.
Many did.
Right now, we're planning to try and keep him as long as possible, if not for the whole season. So there are little spikes here and there, little players that come in. Halfway through the year, we're going to probably have another range of SPPs or whatever they're called these days.
Yeah.
We're going to get a couple of mature age guys that drop on our laps, and we're going to have these options, later in the season. And if they run at a 70, 80 average, then you can cover off. That's why it's so important just to make sure you plan for that worst case. Where's the cash? How are you going to complete your team? Where do you want to get to, come at your completed team?
Yeah, some really good stuff. So we've named a couple of players in different price points. There's a few guys that are interestingly priced across the formats and some are getting a lot of dialogue amongst the fantasy community, some not so much. Over the past fortnight, Zach Butters has really reestablished himself in the fantasy community's vision after back into that midfield role. Certainly not primary, but much stronger split than it was in the earlier parts of the year. Dropped a little bit of cash on what his starting was, and he was arguably value in his starting point anyway, but he now finds himself well and truly underpriced on his potential. But at the same time, and MiniMonk has alluded to a couple of names here already across the formats, Lachie Neale, Tuke Miller, Rory Laird, Tom Stewart, upper end premiums that we've gone against, like using Laird for the example. If you didn't have Laird, this is everything you could have asked for. A couple of really bad scores in that rolling 5 weeks. He arguably is maybe a couple of thousand. He's going to get cheaper. He's shown over the past 3 or 4 weeks that the scoring potential is still there. So how do we balance these value, quote unquote, underpriced guys in a Butters type versus the fallen big dogs that probably will be in our team at the end of the year? How do we make sure we're prioritizing correctly for our team, given choosing one means you probably miss the other?
I think you have to let what you can afford with the rookies that you need to trade out dictate where you move to. If Butters is the best you can afford in your format, then maybe he's the player to move on to. Maybe you do a bit of research around that price point, see what other options there are. He's basically bang on 700K in AF this week. If you like another player that's basically at the same price point, go for them instead. But don't go trying to find the rookie to trade out instead to go up to Miller instead of going for Butters if it rips apart your team in the process. If you're trading Ashcroft instead of trading Menzies this week, it's 200K more that you've got, to be able to deal with your trades, but it's also a much better rookie that you're taking off of the field in the process. And, that kind of plays into the way that people are being able to use boosts in SuperCoach and DreamTeam as well through last season and this season, is that you can say, oh, maybe Davey has only made 60, 70K over his 2 price changes. He might not come back into the team. I'll strip him back to a 117K guy, take the coin and use that to go from a Butters to a Miller or to a Merritt if Merritt wasn't suspended, or to a Parrish.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a waste of a boost. Personally, I feel like that's trying to force an upgrade to a player that you want to get rather than upgrading to the player that you should be getting, or that, the cash that your rookies have that you should be going to. If you've got 200K in the bank this week and you've got a couple of fat cows that you want to trade out and you can afford to get, Roy Laird, Lachie Neale, Tuke Miller through 2 trades, do that. Like, that's a great trade. But if the best player you can afford is a Tom Stewart, a Connor Rosie, a Zach Butters, do that instead. Like, let the rookies dictate who you get to. Don't force the issues.
Yeah. This might not be a player that's on every person's team, but they might have a player like this. Andrew McGrath. You could maybe throw a Will Setterfield in some of the formats into this. These guys that are... Setterfield's probably unfair to put in that same, given the money he's made in contrast to
Angus Brayshaw?
Yeah, guys that people picked to become kind of to do what Dacos and Sarong have done, to be fair. Guys that we think could become premiums in their line have not popped to do so. While we're still on this underpriced getting fallen premiums conversation and maximizing cows, if you are an owner of these mid prices that are doing fine, but not doing great or terrible, do we upgrade around these premiums, or do we take these premiums and go, right, I can turn them into my Lairds, my Millers, my Stewarts, even my Butters, maybe to some extent. What's your thoughts on that? Format depending, I suppose.
Okay, so the first thing you've got to do is look at your buy structure. Okay, what buy does that player fall in? Now, I'm going to call out a name here, okay, which is the guy that I think you're actually thinking when you were talking before and you called out Setterfield, and his name's Hayden Young. Right?
Yeah, Young, McGrath, we can put them all in there. Yeah, sure.
He's round 12 buy, though. Rightio. So the fact is, a lot of times when you've got a guy who hasn't quite hit the expectations you started him with, trying to get to that expectation of becoming that premium 95 guy, whoever it is, if they fall in a later buy, say around 14, round 15 buy at this point in time, you can actually wait till their buy and then trade them to a premium that has their buy already. Okay. That way, if you say jump onto, let's say in the midfields, like, you can jump on a Steele or whoever it is, okay?
Sure.
And you can go and use that as an avenue. So you get him one extra score for that guy that you jumped on. And McGrath's probably the perfect boat on that, okay? You could grab McGrath, get an extra score out of them, right through to their buy. And then as soon as their buy hits, then you trade them out. And you use that as a stepping stone to get the guy that you've missed previously. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. So you saying, people that are in that, Hayden Young, McGrath, Angus Brayshaw, if you're in the in-between, what's the priority for them?
Yeah, so my point here is Hayden Young, you don't have that flexibility on. So if you're going to move him, you have to move him now. Otherwise, you have to wait. Okay, and you have to keep him, and then you have to use him as one of your later upgrades later on, or you just got to give him time to actually become that premium you want him to become. Because, just because he's not getting that score right now doesn't mean he's not going to get it in a month's time, not going to get it in 2 months' time. The fact with these guys is the average for the year caters for every game of the year, not just the first 4 or 5 games.
Yep.
So this is where a lot of things change, okay? But if you were absolutely sick of watching him play,
sure,
you have to jump off him. Otherwise, you can't watch it anymore. Jump off now because you're not going to have that opportunity when the buys come around when you could do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. MiniMonk, have you got any thoughts around that conversation?
I tend to agree. If you've got those players that are on the earlier buy round, say round 12 or round 13, upgrading them to a premium for the round 14, round 15 buys is a play. Otherwise, you're probably holding them up to their buy and then going, right, I'm downgrading them at round 12. I'm going to jump onto a rookie, might lose a little bit in the short run, but the cash that I generate in the back end will allow me to jump onto a premium the next week and, allow you to upgrade through that period. So I think that that's a reasonable point. I think the more interesting players that people are considering moving on to this week, and I think this may be very AF specific.
Sure.
We've alluded to the 2 players earlier.
Jones and Johannesson.
Yeah. And I think this is where coaches might be trying to get a little too tricky.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have been on last week because I had some very, very strong views about a couple of players who were at a very similar price point to these 2 last week, who also had very nice break-evens going into the round.
Jaden Hunt.
And Trent Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was vehemently against, and I even went out and said it multiple times, I don't think that these players are good players to trade in.
Agreed.
And if we lose the example of Hunt, he had a break-even of 14 last week. He also had a break-even of 14 the week before in AF.
Yeah.
He went 69 in AF this week. His break-even is now mid-30s. He posed another 60 this week. and his cash generation is stunted. Trent Rivers went 70 odd, bit better, but his break even is also jumping up quite quickly. I think it's already up into about the low 30s as well. So if you're looking at going players like Johannesson and Jones this week in AF, or even in SuperCoach or DreamTeam, you have to be prepared for that to be a real possibility, because this is within those players' repertoires. We don't know what Bevo's going to do with the magnets. There's every chance that Johannesson has a role change. And Jones was the sub, like 3 weeks ago, and people seem to have forgotten that. If that happens again and he pops a bad score, that cash generation is gone. He becomes a dead pick. He becomes just like those rookies that you have to trade out. It's a forced trade and you have to move. So, there's a lot that's attractive about them because they have that low break even, because they have that low price, and because it's an easy move from a rookie. But it's a very, very risky move right as we're starting upgrade season, because you don't want to have forced trades for the next 5 weeks, because that is what really stunts you through this period of the season.
Some good thoughts.
What we got to really do, MJ, is focus on who we're trading out to get them.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you're really, really going to build your risk. If you're trading someone who's a dead rook, then that's probably worth it. Yeah, say a Chesser go into a Johannesson. That's probably, I could think of worse trades. Like, that's probably not a bad outcome, because you're then pushing Wilmot to D7 and you're doing this or doing that. Sure. And actually, that's not a bad play. That's something that I would do. Okay. But if you're trading a Jimby across, then that's probably something that I wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, and every team is unique. So, and when we say every team is unique, we're not just saying, oh, this player and this player. We're talking about who's your D8, who's your utility in AF, who's your this, who's your extra cover. But you should always, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, I believe, you should always plan for the worst case scenario. And if you're comfortable and got an exit clause from that worst case scenario, then you're happy days.
Yeah.
Number one big thing, though, and it doesn't matter who you trade into, know why you're trading into them. Correct. Are they a stepping stone? Are they a cash gen option? Are you going to keep them to their buy? Are you going to, and just know what you're going to do and manage your expectations, but also have plan B if it does end up being the worst case scenario.
Yep. Some good advice. Let's talk about some of the new DPPs that came into the game. So Sunday evening, I think it's 41 new players received an additional position. There are a few guys, including a Christian Petrarca, who it looked like we were, according to Fantasy Freako, probably about 2 centre bounces, where if he went forward rather than started in the midfield, we probably would have had him too there. So thanks, Goody, for that. We really appreciate you really helping us out there. But there's some really interesting names that have done that. The first are the cows that have added versatility and flexibility to us. So Will Phillips, Cam McKenzie, Wilmot, we've alluded to a number of times already through this episode. And also we've talked, of course, about Harry Sheasel, who now moves in some people's teams from their best forward to their best defender, depending on how their season has been treating them so far. But there's some interesting names that we've gained, and I'm keen, just generally, your boys' thoughts on these guys. We've got some new defenders. Jack Siebel, we're probably not trading into Jack, but certainly some flexibility for those that own him. Keys, Adams, even though he's got the suspension this week. Keys, Adams. You've also got Bailey Smith as some of the big new forwards that we've seen. You could probably throw Jai Caldwell, Will Phillips, some others that are helping us in draft formats. In the back line, we've picked up the likes of the Lockie boys with Ash and Whitfield, along with Sheasel and Zeeble moving back. And then some midfield versatility, the likes of Dawson and Day, that are relatively popular across formats, and now are midfield eligible as well. Some of those players aren't playing this week, alluding to Baz Lenka and Taylor Adams. Some of them are. Of the 40-odd DPP relevance, let's remove the cows from the conversation, and let's look at those that we're considering as targets in our classic teams across the formats. MiniMonk, let's talk about the GWS Lockies And then, Rids, I'll get you to give me your thoughts on the likes of Keys and Bailey Smith as probably some of the more relevant forwards. How helpful are some of the big defenders that we've got, including this new Giants pair?
I think the defensive DPP is quite a good one. Whitfield has shown that he can be a premium with that role. And I think it's more so now in AF and DT than it is in SuperCoach. I think the sample size of the last 2 years is enough to say that Whitfield probably isn't the top 6 defender in SuperCoach that he used to be. There is still that potential. You probably just don't. It's not as likely, I think, is the way to phrase it. Sure. And Ash is someone that could also fit that bill, but he's probably a little bit behind in the pecking order, with Cumming also being down back there. And that makes it really risky. We talk about the Bombers having a lot of mouths to feed down back. I think the Giants kind of fit into a very similar mold. And I think that's where a lot of the risk comes in with someone like Whitfield. Is he's had a couple of really good weeks, but 2 weeks ago, he just cracked the ton in AF and DT, and he had 7 kick-ins because the Bombers kicked 22 behinds. There's not very many games where your opposition is going to kick 22 goals or 22 goals and behinds combined, let alone 22 behinds in a game. So I would probably peg him at about an 85 to 95, depending on where he goes. And that might put him in a D6 range, but he's also probably one of the more risky D6s that you could trade into at this point of the year.
That's good. Rids, let's talk about those forwards. Bailey Smith's come off the back of 100 average last year, and probably about 2 years ago, Ben Keys was flying around that point for us well. Both have picked up forward status. Either of them or any of the others that have picked up forward status of interest to you?
Well, Bad Smith's obviously the big one, yeah?
Yeah.
But we're going to have to see something. We're going to have to see something different from the Bulldogs, from Bevo, from Baz Smith. We're just going to have to see something to have any confidence that that's form from last year is going to come back at some stage this year. So I wouldn't be jumping on him as soon as he plays his next game.
Yep.
But if you see something, but it means you're going to have to watch the footy game and see if you're just going to have to pass the eye test for you. Like someone like Ben Keys won't pass the eye test for me ever. So it's no good me watching him. So the fact is that there's not enough positivity about his role coming out of Adelaide. And we're already seeing a lot of, let's say, more highly skilled footballers not get the CBAs.
Sure.
And Keys is still not getting the CBAs. So guys like Rankin, guys like Rochelle has dropped off a little bit. There's more kids coming through, like a Berry, like a Schomburg, like a Saligo. There's a whole range of people there that are going to get CBAs ahead of Keys. Keys is still getting them, but when Keys needs to get that lockdown role as that forward, and we talked about Dacos previously, there's every potential he's going to be playing on Nick Dacos, whether he's in the CBAs or not. That's just the way it is, okay? So he may get a spike in CBAs, but he's probably going to do a negative role. I want to talk to 2 names now, and I'll bring another conversation around with those 2 names. I want to talk about Callum Mills, and I want to talk about Christian Petrarca. Now, these 2 are the ones that we need to be watching. We saw just recently with those DPPs that Caleb Daniel sort of picked
up forward status. Yeah,
he picked up forward status. So I think we were all going, yeah, we could probably accept that he's going to get mid status, but forward status was interesting because he must have started a lot more ahead of the ball and worked his way into the midfield. So, and that's fine. Those 2 are the guys that I want to monitor for the next lot. And then MJ and MiniMonk as well, I want to start a conversation around Butters and those types. Because if we've already started 4 or 5 of the big premium forwards,
which a lot have,
and we've got a Baz Smith, and now we're going to have potentially a Christian Petrarca coming through, where does Butters fall in all of this? Because I know Butters is the guy that's pretty hyped at the moment, especially in AF this week. Yep. SuperCoach is probably the outlier on that because he's more SuperCoach than...
Yeah, he averaged more than Rosie last year in that format.
Yeah. And he's always been a sort of SuperCoach player. So I sort of get the SuperCoach, but a general discussion around it. Where does he fall? Is he like a potential top 6, or is he actually more from a 10 to a 12? Or anyways, I'll throw it over to you, MiniMonk, first.
I just wanted to make a very quick point on the Dogs boys before I go into a bit of a rant about Butters. It's Treloar that's come in and upset the mix for that midfield. If you look at his CBAs from last year to this year, he has gone from 10, 15% to nearly 70% this year. And they're running a very tight mix. It's Libba, it's Bond, it's Treloar and McRae, and Smith is on the outer.
Yeah.
So if Smith comes back and he's still getting 5 to 10% CBAs, or maybe even only 30% CBAs, you're probably not jumping up. But if you see that start to climb to about 50, 55%, and his price is, 500K in SuperCoach and 800K in AF and DT, or heaven forbid, one of the Dogs boys in their midfield gets injured, that's when you jump on. And now let's talk about Zach Butters, because I did some research in the preseason and I've gone back to refer to my notes from that preseason. And I did a comparison between Rosie and Butters. And I thought, well, they're pretty similar picks, pretty similar players, very similar scores, pretty similar price. Rosie's the one that's taken off. Butters is the one that hasn't taken off. And Butters' CBAs to start this year haven't been high. 33, 41, 12. But then the last 2 weeks, 68%, 64%. Okay, that's a bit of a bump. And we know that when he averages about 50% CBAs, he's a 95 to 100 guy. He's done it before. You take out his injured games from last year, he went at 96. Is that enough to be an F6? Yeah, it is enough to be an F6.
Yeah,
but does that exactly? But does that role last for the entire season? We don't know. Are there DPPs that are going to come in? We don't know. But then the other thing that brings it around for me is what's Port's run over the next few weeks?
Yeah, it's good.
And what buy does Zach Butters have? Their run is very, very, very nice, especially for inside midfielders and general forwards. And what buy do Port Adelaide have? By golly gosh, they have the round 15 buy. So if you're buying Zach Butters and thinking that he's going to be a premium, sure, that might not eventuate, but sure. But if you're buying him and thinking, oh, he might hit 900K at his buy, there might be other premium midfielders that get DPP, like a Christian Petrarca, and I can flip him at his buy to one of those players. That's where there is a lot of interest in a player like Zach Butters for me.
And MJ, I've got to tell you right now, this is why I love having MiniMonk on here, okay? Because I can just make a point and then bring up something and he just drives it home. Now, what did I say a couple of minutes ago about having the worst case scenario, have the exit clause, the whole lot, and how we can actually sideways trade to premiums, upgrade through premiums through the buys?
Correct.
But you think about this right now. So in AF right now, the play right now is let's go jump on Zach Butters. Okay. Sure. Yep. There's potentially might be a premium, but what's the worst case scenario is you actually keep him to his buy and then you actually trade him at his buy to a guy who's already had his buy. That's not a bad outcome anyways. And at his price point right now in AF, it's absolutely. So manage your expectations, people, if you're going to go jump on that ride. We know the history. We know what's going to potential is a worst case scenario could come to fruition. We know this. His attack on the ball is kamikaze.
It's amazingly intense.
Yes. He puts himself in very vulnerable situations. There's no doubt about that. And at right now, we just don't know what that Port mix looks like from week to week because we've got Rosie, we've got Wines. We don't know when Willem Drew is going to tag.
Horn Francis. You've got Boak every now and then.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just very, it shifts all the time. But the end game is that you get your completed team, and that would be ideal if he sits there at F6 for the rest of the year. That's perfect. What's the out clause? At his buy, I'm going to bring and jump across to whoever's had their buy. And let's say it is Petrarca right now. I'm going to go jump on Petrarca.
And it's potentially a sideways move. Boost premium on field. We've talked about this run for the Port Adelaide Power. Let me run you through it. West Coast this week. St Kilda, okay, maybe a bit harder. Then it really opens up again with Essendon, North Melbourne, Richmond, Hawthorn, Western Bulldogs, and maybe not the perfect one to end, but Geelong. It is certainly a nice run. I love that idea of best case scenario, here's a transition at the bye. In fact, best case scenario is probably someone you got till round 23, but best case scenario round 23, likely scenario, a trade at round 15. Worst case scenario is he probably jogs you a couple of 80s and makes you 20, 30, 50K, and probably you're pushing a cow off field for him, more than likely.
Yeah. I mean, this is what we talk about with what's achievable with your trades. His price in AF specifically here, because I'm of a very firm opinion that this is a very AF play. I think in SuperCoach and in DreamTeam, I don't like it as much, but in AF, I think it's a very, very good play.
Sure.
His price is so achievable with two rookies that you're not confident in. It's so easy to get up to him. And if that, reasonable scenario is you trade him at his buy and he averages, let's say 90 between now and then, that is a huge win. That is an absolutely huge win because you're getting not only the points on field, you're getting rid of rookies that you're not exactly happy with, that aren't on field, and you allow yourself to be able to move to a premium very easily when he hits his buy.
And I'm just going to throw one more thing, and I'm
Please.
going to revisit a conversation we had a second ago.
Yes.
Around these underperforming, lower than expectation guys, and I mentioned Hayden Young.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't want to go and rehash like specifically for Hayden Young all the time because poor MiniMonk's a Fremantle fan. He's been through enough this year, okay?
Yeah, he's...
We've seen it, MJ. How many times have we seen poor MiniMonk going, can you just give the ball to Young and stop ignoring him? The fact is, he's 100% correct.
Correct.
But right now, we've got all these guys that have got defense status picked up in the last week or so. We're talking the Zeebles, we're talking the Sheezels and whatever else.
Yeah.
What do you reckon the play would be to better your buy structure for your team at no actual cost if you just can't handle those guys anymore? Could potentially be a Young to a Butters. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it makes a tiny bit of cash on the way too.
Although, if I'm being honest, and I am still a Young owner, as much as it pains me, I don't think this is the week to do that. And the reason why is he has the matchup that you want your defenders to have.
Western Bulldogs.
Yep.
But maybe next week. Maybe next week you move him up to a premium instead.
Break up with him next week is what I'm
exactly
saying.
Just throwing it out there, though, that's potential what you can do, and you're fixing two problems with one stone. You may actually enjoy your fantasy football game to do that better, but you're also fixing your buy structure and your potential problem down the road. So there is options here, and we just said it a second ago. Round 12 buy in Young, round 15 buy in Butters. And that doesn't mean that you can't trade back into a Young like after his buy if he does start picking up. So if you're going to do that, you got to jump quickly and do it. And I get it with the Bulldogs and everything, but the fact is, Paul Wagner didn't have the greatest game last week. We're already talking about Wilson. There's a whole heap of discussions going on around. It's just a bit, who knows where this is going to land.
Yeah,
it's very up in the air.
Sorry, MiniMonk, were you going to say something?
It is a very up in the air situation with that Freo backline. And look, for those who have traded into Wagner, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in the 23 this week or even if he's the sub this week. So that's just a word of warning for those that are even considering trading into him.
Yeah, look, there was a little bit of confidence you could have taken out of the press conference from JL this week, but certainly it wasn't glowing in confidence. Rather, it was, I like to give guys a couple of weeks rather than, nah, loved what he did sort of thing. So certainly not the most glowing endorsement, but we'll take that. Before we go, there are two things. And before I go, we get into the podcast. Boosts are an interesting thing that you alluded to a little bit earlier, MiniMonk, and it's a unique experience for Dream Team and SuperCoach, guys. It's where for 5 teams a year, you can maximize the opportunity to make significant moves in a week 5 times at any time during a year, where you can make 1 additional trade above the standard. So 2 in normal rounds, you can make 3 with the boost. In the multi-buy rounds, you can normally make up to 3, but using a boost, you can use 4 trades. However, once all 5 are gone, they're done. The vast majority of the community will have used at least 1, whether that be to correct multiple issues heading into the bubble round, whether it be to fix a premium, mid-price, or a cow. I don't know off the community many that are still sitting pretty with 5. However, in this week, and MiniMonk alluded to this earlier, coaches are forcing a needle through the eye that might not be needing to be threaded and trying to make moves happen. So my question to you boys is around, how should we be using our boosts at this portion in time of the year that are both correct uses of the boost versus I'm just a little too trade happy and I'm going to regret these moments in 8 to 10 weeks time?
I'm going to start this off by talking about the buys, because I think this is a really important caveat for when we're using our boosts. Last year, we had a 6-6-6 buy structure, 6 teams off in each week, and we were fairly evenly distributed through the buys based on the way that teams looked, around about round 6, round 7 of the season. This is not the same year. We are looking at a lot of issues at that round 15 buy. There are teams that have 7 or maybe even 8 players that they want to keep through that buy round who are on that buy round. You're talking 8 premiums of your 30 players. That leaves you with 22. Chances are you're going to have rookies that are dropped, rookies that are not playing, loophole options. To me, I'm wanting to save a boost for round 15 and maybe even for round 14 as well, so that your team can be corrected through those 2 weeks. So then the caveat becomes, right, well, what do we need to do with the boosts now? And the correct answer is you need to make sure that you're in a position where you can save them. And this goes back to that discussion we were having before about finding the right premiums to move to based on the rookies that you have, not moving to the premiums that you want to get to and forcing the issue.
Yeah.
If you can get to, let's say, a Tom Stewart this week in SuperCoach with 2 trades, but you really want to get to Jordan Dawson, but you're going to have to use a boost, settle on Tom Stewart.
Agree.
Save the boost, save the extra trade, wait for the cash generation to kick in, and target the player that you want a little bit down the line. Those are the types of things that people need to be considering when they're deciding whether or not they want to activate the boost. Another thing about this week is that we don't have that many rookies on the bubble. We do next week. We might have 4 or 5 on the bubble next week. Might be a good time to do a 2 down, 1 up, because you can get onto a couple of those. But this week, there's really only the 1 rookie on the bubble that people are considering, which is Williams. Maybe people are considering going to Roberts or Johnson instead.
Moyle,
but these are rookies.
Maybe.
Yeah, these are all rookies we're not particularly happy with moving into. We're kind of doing it because, we have to cull the money somewhere.
Yes.
And so if you're doing an extra trade and moving on to a rookie that you're not particularly happy with and using a boost in the process, as well as using the trade and not getting the maximum cash generation, that's when I think you're missing a trick with using the boost this season.
Yeah, that's good. Any thoughts you have on the boost, Rids, before we jump into our Patreon questions?
So I just want to throw out that Roberts in SuperCoach is probably the black sheep of the family, because he's close, Rodio.
Yeah.
To being the number 1 downgrade option this week when it comes to rookies in SuperCoach.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's 100% correct. But the thing is, make sure who you're targeting, okay, and who you're accepting to come into that, like, is a Stewart, like who you think is in that echelon of top 6 defenders. So you don't go, I'm going to accept a Jake Lloyd if I can get to a like Dawson in the extra. That's where you use the extra trade, because there's a likelihood down the road you're going to use that trade anyways to get. So you don't accommodate always. That's when you need to use a boost, is when you can maximize it, because all you're doing is you're using that extra trade, albeit in the 1 week. But years ago, when we didn't have a boost, all we used to do is go, you know what, I'll make 1 downgrade this week, and next week I'll make 1 downgrade and 1 upgrade and get it anyway and not use the boost.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, don't be impatient. Like, I've seen some of the craziest suggestions on boosts this week, and I'm sure you two have as well. Like, where it's like, guys, you're trading out someone who's still got another 50K. Just use cull the guy this week, maximize your cash, grab the guy you need, and then next week when he makes that 50 grand, go drop him then. And you can absolutely. And they're all worried about the weak matchup. Like, of the premium this week. And it's like, yeah, but we're trading them in for the rest of the season.
Correct.
Like, if I get it, Tuke Miller at the moment, he should be on everybody's radar.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
But it's not absolutely must trade in Tuke Miller this week just because he plays North Melbourne.
Correct.
There are a couple of negatives around that match. The timing of it, where it's being played at. There's a couple of bits and pieces. Like, there's probably questions, a bigger conversation around, is Tuke Miller still the number 1 midfielder for the Gold
Is it Noah
Coast?
Anderson now?
Is it Noah Anderson's coming up? Does Matt Rowell's extra improvement from another season eating in? Who knows where this all goes? So don't make it that conversation in your head mean, I have to get Tuke Miller this week. I have to get Miller this week. It's okay. You can get him next week and pay an extra 20,000 and be confident about getting him, and just be franked by that decision. Because if you go and force it, and this is where forcing the trade comes into it, and you go and force it, and you trade him in, and you're trading into 100 when you're expecting 150, how do you feel about that when you've used another boost?
Yeah, that's good. Some good advice. All right, let's jump into some of our Patreon questions before we wrap up this episode. You boys on this episode have been absolutely superstars. If you want to become a Patreon, all the links are in the description of this podcast episode. They get a bunch of hidden group access to additional podcasts, articles, and of course, the power to get their questions directly answered on these podcasts. And it's just one of the practical ways you can support the Coaches Panel. All the links are in the podcast description. Matt's asked a question about SuperCoach cash cows, which I think you boys actually just beautifully answered then in terms of the right ones to be targeting and the right mindset. So Matt, I hope that one kind of helped you out through there. A SuperCoach one will throw to you, Rids, from Grimo. He says he's double downgrading this week and using a boost to a primo mid. So his thoughts are trading Baker, Oscar, to Williams, grabbing Tuke, or trading Chandler to Johnson and grabbing Laird. That's his question. And then he's got another one about, would Neil be a better option than Laird or Tuke? So he's kind of doubling down on one of those 3. So what's your thoughts on doing a trade like that? Baker out, Williams in, and Chandler out, and Johnson in, and then going up to one of those uber premium midfielders.
I just couldn't do Chandler to Johnson and have any confidence that in 3 weeks' time that I'm going to be happy with that downgrade.
Yes.
Like, there's no way known I could do that, because, like, Melbourne's got a really handy 4 weeks. There's every chance that Chandler's going to actually spit out a nice score in the next couple of weeks and actually go up another 50, 100,000. Like,
yeah, I agree.
And on top of that, he's been one of our best job security rooks in that.
He's been so good at F6 for us this year. F5.
And I mean, Johnson, like, we're talking about, look, and we just said that Fremantle's got a lot of moving parts. There's a guy called Will Brodie that's the biggest moving part in the world right now. He came on as the vest last week and actually changed the fortune of that game, and they won. Like, he can do a lot of good.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
good.
just don't have any confidence Johnson, will have an inside role anyway. He might be stuck out on a wing. There's been a lot of to in and fro in on the wings for Fremantle in the last, or even this season. Like we've seen probably 5 names go through there.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be confident that that's a good move.
Yep. MiniMonk, a thought on that?
I was just going to say Johnson's role changed when Brody came onto the field
did.
as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I would be really worried about if I was trading into him.
Yep.
He was in those midfield rotations, but then, Switkowski goes down injured. You replace him with a like for like. That's Johnson, unfortunately, at that stage. And he pushed forward. And you can see that in his scoring. He saved his week. He saved his score with a big last quarter.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
There was a very clutch goal in that. And he got in a lot of contests as a result. But I wouldn't be downgrading into him with any confidence that he's going to hold that role, let alone not be a sub.
Let alone not even be in the team in 3 or 4 weeks' time. Yeah, that's a good call. All right, AFL fantasy question from Guy. He's also got a SuperCoach one, but we'll throw the AF one to you, MiniMonk. He's got 735K. He's targeting a defender. These are some of the options he's looking at. Zeeble, Stewart, Wilkie, and Liam Baker. Who's the pick of the litter? I feel like this is a nice, easy one for you.
I feel like this is a little bit of a softball. To my eyes, it's Tom Stewart. He has been a top 6 defender before. He's tracking that way again. He scored pretty well in what's not a good matchup for, designated kicker off half back. His price is good and his buy is good. If I'm ranking the next few options, I'm probably tossing a coin between Zeeble and Baker. I think they both could be interesting rides. And I'm probably putting Wilkie in 4th.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with Zeeble and Baker is there are potential changes coming to their sides with the likes of a Jaden Short and an Aaron Hall that might disrupt some of that current structural movements we've seen. So I'm with you there. I'd be a bit hesitant to trade into either of those two boys. SuperCoach question we'll throw to you, Rids, from him. He's got Grundy in his ruck alongside Marshall. He's realising he wants to get into English, especially if Max is back. Should he just stick it out with Grundy? He's got that 200K. Or should he be looking to be moving on some of the cows and getting up to some upgrades? He's looking at Tukin, guys like Menzie and Jinby as his ticket to that. What should be his priority if Max is back this week?
I think Grundy's got a nice enough break even that you can actually park it for a week.
And a decent matchup against
whereas English has got a very awkward matchup this week. I won't say it's a difficult matchup.
No, Darcy's not
awkward
an easy one for sure.
Okay, but it's also the timing of the matchup. It's like the first or second game of the round where it goes all the way through to Tuesday.
It's a long week of non-knowing full teams.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that you can do by keeping that trade up your sleeve and then using it through the week if any carnage does happen to drop and hit you. So I would hold Grundy for the week. Hopefully he, like Gawn, is eased in as a forward a lot more. Then you might be bypassing an awkward matchup for English. And then also catering to make sure you've got a straight up your sleeve just so you can cover it off if there is any carnage to laid outs or anything.
Yeah, it's true.
67 break even in Supercoach. Matchup is against Richmond. No Nankervis. Yeah.
Even a bad
it's
week.
The one that you'd probably. Even a bad week, it's an 85, 90.
100%.
Do the 2 rookie fix. Get a premium onto your field. Target English later.
Yeah, I like that. Some good advice from you lads. MiniMonk, SuperCoach question from Adam. He's got some issues with his cash generation on his bench. Chesser, Constable. He's thrown Cowan into the mix. He's now putting, which again, I know you boys have alluded to, but he's now looking at names like Jinby, McKenzie, and Chandler. And he thinks if he can get into the likes of Sinclair, is it worth losing these guys? I know we've talked about this a little bit, but using some specific names, what's your take in and around that trade idea?
I think that that's really risky, especially if you're trading someone like Jinby, if your defensive bench cover is Cowan, Chesser, and Constable.
Yeah.
You lose one of your defenders, chances are you're eating a donut. And you really don't want to be eating a donut at round 6 in the season.
No, I think it's
so.
good
I
shit.
would be trying to hold Jinbi, and I'd probably be fixing some of those rookies. It's really hard with players like Constable and Chesser when they haven't had that third game to have that price movement. I can see Chesser coming back at some point in the season.
Yeah.
I can see Constable coming back, but as a sub mainly, not actually in the 22. And I think Cowan is the one that you actually probably want to hold because there's every chance that he has a spike game where he goes 75, his cash generation bumps for the next 2 weeks, and then you can move him on at that point. It's a really tricky one, but I would probably try and move one of those two. And if it's one that I'm moving out, it's probably Constable, despite the fact that he has a lower break even, because I just don't see him coming back into that Suns team.
Yep, that's fair enough. Sam Penny's got an AFL fantasy question for you, Rids. He's a Jack Bowes owner. He's got all the big guns. He's nailed the rookies. He's copped the green suspension, but that's okay. He's finding himself ranked inside the top 5K, so he's had a nice start. What should be his focus? Moving on some topped-out rooks or getting Bowes out of the side? He's got 230K in the bank before making any other moves. If you'd like to know the price point of Jack Bowes to give you the full information, Rids, just to complete the picture, I'm happy to do that for you. Jack is priced at $625,000 in AF.
Yeah, so just put that money on his head and actually fix the problem.
Yeah, Stuart. You
can fix
100K.
And you fix a bad rookie in the process as well. Like you do,
Sinclair,
a Menzie down or someone else down. You make 100K. It's 330K on someone who's 625. Take your pick of the defenders at that point.
Well, there's Dawson now, who's still very attainable in AF.
Exactly. I'd fix that issue.
Yeah,
I'd just fix it and move on. Let's say it is a Dawson, okay? You could probably get to Dawson with the cash you got there now anyways on top of Bowes.
Just about, yeah.
Too. And then even then with the rook at the lower level, you don't want to spend 600,000 for a guy who's going to give you rookie scores.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Bowes, what was it, 40 on the weekend?
Yeah, it was. It's not been pretty for a couple of weeks there yet.
Yeah, so just pop the money on his head, get yourself to the Dawson or whoever you don't have, whether it's a Stewart or whoever else, and then fix the other guy, the broken rook that's not playing, and move him across to someone that can make a bit of cash for you.
Nice.
I think this harps into a more generic point about when's the right time to trade an underperforming premium or a mid-pricer. And it's when they have that potential to pop a score that a rookie can easily match. Bowes has popped a 47 on the weekend. That's the exact same score that, some of our rookies got on the weekend. Like Pedler got a 47, Cowan got a 41, and they are 300K cheaper.
Yep.
If your underperforming premium or your mid-pricer is popping a score that a rookie can match, that's when it's fine to trade them.
Yep. Nice. Some good
thoughts. It wasn't exactly like it was a hard matchup last week.
No.
Like played against.
No, it was a good matchup.
Like you would have been expecting more than a 50.
70 at least, I think you'd be hoping for.
Well, that's why he's probably held on to him. So,
yes.
So just fix it now.
Yep, it's good. Jamie's got an AFL fantasy question for you, MiniMonk. Two options. Cowan to Johannesson. I suppose you could go Jones if in that scenario. Or he can do McGrath to Took in a single trade. He can do one of those two in a single trade. With the JJ, I can push one of either Matt Roberts or Wilmot to the bench. But with the Took trade, I have to field them both. So that's his dilemma. It's JJ on field, one of Roberts or Wilmot on field, Took on field, but has to play them both. What's your thoughts? Of course, McGrath's in that combination too. I assume he's not trading him there. So,
So let's look at McGrath's scores from the year in AF. 81, 86, 79, 65, 84. One bad game out of 5. This is 65. It's not a score that's really hurting you. He's priced at 696. He's probably not going up too much in price. He's probably not going down too much in price. I think you get the rookie off field. Who knows what Wilmot and Cowan are going to score this week? And if you have the opportunity to even loop them, say you have a Chesser at D8, that feels really good to me. So I think that's the way that I would be headed.
And that's exactly how I've mentioned before. Like you're going from Cowan up to Johannesson and you're pushing Wilmot to your bench. That's the perfect play in my eyes too.
Yep. Nice. Good one. Hodgie's next in, a couple more, and then we're done. You boys have been killing it. 2-part question for you, Rids, in AFL Fantasy. He's wanting to trade into one of Roberts, Mitchell, Johnson, or Williams. Which of those feels like the more important trade in AFL Fantasy from a downgrade of a cow perspective?
So it's one of the first two.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I would say there's two groups in that, okay? You've got Roberts and you've got Mitchell in the first group, and then the other two in the second group.
That's fair enough. So on the basis of that, he says he's got 390k spare to trade, and he's got two options he's looking at. Cowan to Butters, or move Jeremy Cameron up to a Noah Anderson. Which of those two upgrades do you like more? No idea if Cowan's on the field for him or not.
Okay, so just what was that first part?
It was so based on getting one of those cows that he downgrades to, it will free him up.
Cowan to Butters and
Cowan to Butters or Jeremy Cameron up to Noah Anderson.
Why Jeremy Cameron?
Yeah,
why would you be trading out Jeremy Cameron? He's going.
I'm not too sure. He's going just fine.
So can I say option one then?
Yeah, Cowan to Butters. Absolutely fine. SuperCoach question for you from Causa. He's got a couple, but we'll throw it to you, MiniMonk. Who out of Miller, Stewart, Neil, or Zeeble is the priority this week? Who would be your 1 and 2 priorities?
I'm just going to knock Zeeble out this week and say I don't think Zeeble is the right idea to trade into, especially when you're considering the other 3 that are in that group. And then it's probably about where you need to bolster your lines. I would be targeting either Miller or Stewart this week. I think they're both great, but I also think in SuperCoach you can wait a week on Stewart because that 160 that he scored 3 weeks ago is out of his price cycle. His break-even's back up to about 130 now. And on the basis of that, I'd probably go Miller.
Yeah, and the importance of that multi-buy round value that those Gold Coast and Cats players are going to give us during their... we're going to talk about that, I'm sure, as we get closer. Then in AFL Fantasy... sorry, Rids, did you want to jump on that?
No, not at all.
No, okay, but no worries. He's then got an AFL Fantasy question. Is it worth getting Dacos or Dawson? His ticket to it, I feel like this is going to get fun, is Tom Green. Should he do that? Or should he fix up some cows like Yuland on the bench and then deal with those?
MJ, just stop talking. No, don't do that, please. Just never do that. Just never do that.
I'm just asking the question.
Or actually, as a Dacos non-owner, okay, I do not own Dacos in AFL Fantasy. Do it, because you're going to jinx Dacos to get a tag to a 60. Just do it.
Green's what, the 5th highest averaging midfielder in the game, and he's suspended for 1 week.
Yeah, no,
we're holding it.
Yeah,
I just want to make that very clear. It's a hold.
Especially like he's written a bit further. He's like, man, I can go and get Johannesson off, via a Yuland. If I'm like, yes, that's much better for your team longer term and for this week.
That's so much better for your team. Yeah? You're pushing a rook on your bench. You're getting rid of a dead rook on the bench. You're actually doing a lot of stuff here. You're getting better cash gen. Just do that. Yeah, just do that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Last 4 or 5 questions we're done. 2 from Sriram. How important is it about thinking about your buy structure at this point in the season? And I'm assuming he's more a Dream Team and SuperCoach because he's specifically alluding to the Gold Coast and the Suns players who we know will become important for us during the buy rounds. MiniMonk, your thoughts? How much should we be weighting the buy round?
Relatively significantly, in my eyes. We've only got 2 teams on that round 13 buy, and they will play every other week of the buy rounds. But the other thing is that the 2 targets that most people are looking at across the formats are Stewart and Miller to guide us through those rounds. And they're at a really cheap price, and they're players who we think are top of their line. Like, if you can get onto them, and chances are they might not be the best available player, chances are they're pretty darn close to it, and you're flipping a coin. And when you start flipping that coin, what do you start to use to determine who you want? It's typically the buy rounds.
Yeah.
And that 13 buy round with those 2 players, super juicy.
Yeah, that's really, really good. JP Fam 3 has a question for you, Rids. Oh no, I just read it before. Before is Green a trade?
Yep, trade him away. Knock yourself out. Just do it.
Is he a trade worth moving on to Caleb Saron?
Yeah, why not? Just do it. And what I want you to do is make that trade and then take a learning from it and why you shouldn't trade him out.
Yeah. Surely you've got
did I word that nicely enough to to say don't trade it?
Yeah, look, we can work on some of your demeanor in that. But yeah, that's not bad from you. I'll give you that. Last two ones. Bandicoot has our last two questions. I'll throw this first one to you, Rids, because the second one's a Fremantle question, so I'm keen on MiniMonk's take on it. How many trades is too many trades to have used heading into round 6 in Dream Team?
I'd say 36.
Yeah.
No, I'd say if you're happy with your team, then it's not, you haven't used, you haven't overused. Just as long as you're happy with your team and you can actually start from now and you've got around that 25 to 29 number, you should be fine.
Yep. I don't think you want to have used more than 10, and you probably want to have used more than 3 boosts. I think around about 8 to 9 trades and 2 boosts is that pretty sweet spot.
Yep.
If you've got 28 or more trades and you've only used 2 boosts, you're in a perfect spot.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, last question. It's also from Bandicoot. Fremantle question. What the heck with Andy Brayshaw? He's probably lost too much money to trade. He's clearly an owner. Do I just keep holding and doing that? Is that simple as that? Give me that answer and then give me a bit more of your commentary about Brayshaw, because non-owners are licking their lips at this guy.
If we look at his scores, it's a couple of bad games. There's a 90 and there's a 72, and the 72 really stings. But he was tracking for a high 90 score in that game before he had a 1 point last quarter. 1 point. That really hurts. So, yeah, owners are licking their lips to get him. But if you, non-owners licking the lips, but if you're an owner, you probably just have to stick through it and hold him.
Yeah.
He's a player who's gone 105, 110, 115 for stretches of a season when he's on form. He's out of form and he's still averaging 101.
In Dream 2 in fantasy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a hold. But there's interesting things about him. So it's not been well reported, but by all looks, it seems like he's carrying a niggle. He has not been 100%. He's not been running well. He's had strapping on his knee at points. He's not 100% clearly. So if he's not at that level and he's still averaging 100, think about how good he's going to be once he gets past that niggle in 3 weeks' time. And imagine if you trade out of him and all of a sudden he starts going 115.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't be trading out of him if not. Again, it's in the layered conversation that we alluded to 20, 30 minutes ago. If you went against him, this is exactly what you are hoping for. A dip of 1 or 2 lower scores, make himself really nicely priced. The only flag around Brayshaw is first buy round. So you're trading into missing him earlier than potentially some of your other guys. But that's not a reason not to get him. It's still just a factor in there for you.
But MJ, you don't pay 110 or whatever it is, okay, and then say, oh, thanks for the 100 average after 5 games and trade out of them. You just 100%. Go, you know what? The price is gone. The dollars are gone. I've traded into you so you can average that 110 for the season. So you just got to back them in now. So the thing with Laird, though, which is slightly different, okay, Laird, I think there was lots of things moving, magnets moving around the board, but we've seen that Adelaide midfield mix tighten right up in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and they've won the last 3 games. Laird's been a lot more, I would say, less targeted. I think Dawson's going to be the number one tag target moving forward.
Right,
we saw Laird get absolutely hammered by 2 tags just recently, and they did good jobs. Just sometimes you just got to go, you know what? People just do a good job. Like that Willem Drew job on him was just amazing in the first half.
Yep.
Like sometimes you just got to go, you know, tip your hat, away you go. Brayshaw, he hasn't looked in form. And there's been enough commentaries to suggest he's injured somewhat and he's carried something. So MiniMonk's 100% correct. And just in the last couple of days, I think we've heard JL say, oh, he's starting to get back to 100%. That doesn't mean he's been 100% for the year. That means he's been injured. He's struggled. He's coming back to 100%. You don't want to trade out of him now.
No, absolutely not. And there's a run of games during the year. It is post-bye that is very interesting to me for Brayshaw. It's Richmond, GWS, Essendon, Western Bulldogs, and Carlton are the first 5 weeks after the bye. They're not juicy, oh my goodness, amazing matchups, but you talk about a guy to target potentially at his basement price. It's not bad, MiniMonk.
And the round 24 matchup against Hawthorn at the MCG.
Oh, my word.
There's
And MJ,
captaincy.
Oh, my
do
word.
you remember years ago, Chris Yaring came out in the preseason game and was absolute destroyed.
I still have PTSD about this. Stop doing this because I picked him.
What happened? He got
tagged
next week. So right now, Sarong is absolutely flying, rightio. He's been one hell of a great starting pick. There's no question about it. But where do you reckon the attention goes starting from next week onwards? Is it going to be to Brayshaw, who's out of form, who hasn't been racking it up, influencing games? Or is it going to be to Caleb Sarong?
Well, round 1, they tagged Sarong over Brayshaw, the St Kilda Footy Club.
Ross is a bit weird at times. I don't have inside knowledge of that. But you see what I mean? It just makes sense. Like Brayshaw's the one that you want to be backing on now.
Not jumping off.
But Sarong, that doesn't mean Sarong's a bad pick.
No.
It's just you're paying a lot more than what you've passed him at previously.
No, it's good. You lads have been sensational right throughout this podcast. I hope as you've been listening to it, you've been able to pick up some of the nuggets of the gold that both Rids and MiniMonk have been sharing with you. So Rids, as always, mate, an absolute pleasure now having you on the podcast.
Yeah, too easy, mate.
Yeah, well done from you and MiniMonk. Well done, Harry Sheasel.
Thank you for having me on.
I'm just going to start calling you Harry for the rest of the year. It's just going to stick because you two Muppets started to get every time someone sends us a direct message, they're like, MJ, I want to know about your hair. So Harry's just going to start sticking.
When's the rising star coming?
Talking about hair, how much product have you got in that tonight?
Oh, my goodness.
It's almost up vertical today.
It'd be like a cyclone would be blowing and your hair wouldn't move an inch.
Just call me Ray Martin and you're absolutely fine. You lads have been awesome. Thank you for listening. If you loved what you got from the Coaches Panel so far in 2023, you can always join our Patreon supporter group. Not one bit of it goes towards funding my hair product. I can guarantee you of that. It goes towards helping the Coaches Panel do everything we do for you as a content creator, podcast, website, social media, all the great content you get. There are plenty of hidden bonus content pieces, podcasts, articles, and the hidden groups. All the links for the Patreon supporter group you can find in the description of this podcast episode. At coachespanel.tv, there's articles dropping really regularly right throughout the week. But we wish you all the best of luck as you're heading into round 6. We hope your trades work your way, that you nail the captaincy calls, and that the ever-challenging rookie roulette is kind to you. Until we chat with you in the round review next week for our subscribers and for you in our strategy roundtable, we can't wait to chat next week with you here at the Coaches Panel.